Yeah, it just struck me how interesting it is that we've been in the Psalms, and it seems like I can't really get away from them. In light of the context with which we're in our lives, being war, the war we see overseas, the war that's going on here politically, socially, and the war that's going on inside, each individual person. And to think about, when the people who wrote the Psalms, that was always their context. And it was the extreme, the extreme being, their context was war. It's constant war. So, because I didn't purposefully go to the Psalms. I really didn't purposely do it. It just kind of happened on accident. And we've just consistently been in it. And I won't get to a Psalm here until the end. And then we'll again see a contrast between how man, and we've talked about this extensively already, especially 2 weeks ago, I think, but the difference between man's idea of peace and God's idea of peace. And this is going to be interesting too, as it kind of leads to Romans chapter 7, that you're going to be covering probably in a couple of weeks, right? So yesterday, I've got drill this weekend, and yesterday I met with a good chaplain friend of mine, and I didn't really make, I've thought about this a little bit, but didn't really make the strong connection with this dynamic. Well, we just had a unit deployed to Ukraine for almost a year, and they left Ukraine literally a month before Russia attacked and invaded Ukraine. So we had one of our own Washington units that spent a year in Ukraine. And one of my close friends, who's a chaplain, was there. And he had this unique experience in which he interacted with many chaplains from Ukraine. And the interesting thing there is they're mainly Eastern Orthodox there, and it's not necessarily an accomplished or formal chaplaincy in the military. They're basically pastors, priests in cities that volunteer to minister to soldiers. But my friend Jeff, had this really a daily contact with and developed really close friendships with these chaplains in Ukraine. And what he did with his unit is he was able to, through these chaplain relationships, find different ministries or organizations in town and throughout Ukraine in which he set up opportunities for soldiers to go serve, like orphanages, different organizations like that. And they did this the whole deployment. And so I just asked Jeff, and we met another chaplain who was on, one of our chaplains that was on the deployment with him down in Tumwater. And it was interesting just remembering my deployments, because they were walking around, because they just recently came back and people got off leave and they're basically finally back to normal lives. And for a lot of them, this is one of their first normal drills back in kind of normal status. So as Jeff went into the armory, the new armory in Tumwater, a lot of those folks in that unit had deployed with him. So it was this every person that Jeff saw was this neat reunion, because he hadn't seen them since the redeployment. But the sad part of it is these guys know a lot of people that they're actually directly in touch with in Ukraine. As I was sitting there with Jeff in my office, and we're talking about Ukraine, he was talking about the base they were at. Their base was one of the bases in the West, and it was the one that was bombed by Russia just a couple weeks ago when Biden was in Poland. Kind of that show of force or whatever to kind of, Putin was kind of telling whatever he was making because he normally hasn't hit some of those cities that far west. They've been mainly north and east. So Jeff was showing me the chapel where they were at. He's got a really neat story, because basically this base was destroyed except for the Eastern Orthodox chapel and the U.S. chapel. So there's, that kind of mystical, magical thing that, again, the Ukrainians especially, was special to them, the fact that the chapels didn't get destroyed, but everything else did. But Jeff knows people who have died, and he's in direct contact with people and as we were sitting there, one of his friends from Ukraine called him, and Jeff had a 30-minute conversation with him, because Jeff's now involved with some organizations here in the States that are helping send humanitarian aid. The interesting thing is he knows the direct people where that aid is going to. So I'm gonna get with our leadership team and see what we can do as a church, and let the congregation know kind of who we would like to support, and if you guys would like to help support that, I would like to send them some funds to be able to do that. So then it's in helping directly with certain churches and like the orphanage where they were at and everything else. But it just brought to home, even emotionally, especially as I watched them, and I thought about the struggle that our friends here in Washington may be having and are having, because they know people that are directly affected. And they're literally getting calls and texts and even people appealing to, a chaplain to have the United States send more stuff. And of course the chaplain's going, I can't do that. So I never really made that connection in my head until yesterday. And it really kind of highlighted what we talked about a couple weeks ago regarding this idea of peace, and what man's peace is versus God's peace. And some of the verses that we didn't cover in the lesson a couple weeks ago, I wanted to touch on today. So I'll remind you that what we started on a couple weeks ago was the verse out of Romans 3, the end of Romans 3 that we talked about extensively a few weeks ago. Was at the end of that passage, it says, "And the way of peace they have not known." And I think everybody was here. So that we talked about this idea that humans do not know peace. And that know is they don't understand it. It's like they have no knowledge of peace. The peace that God is talking about, and we'll somewhat define and then contrast with the human peace, it's completely different. So the way of peace they have not known, and what we already talked about extensively in Romans 3, 10 through 18, is all the destructive, that no man seeks, no man knows, nobody seeks God, nobody knows God, and then all the different things that it's a wake, in our wake is a path of death and destruction as a result of our knowledge, our understanding, our activity. And then it says, "And the way of peace they have not known." And to me, again, I think we've already talked about it, but that was amazing to me, to tie this idea of that man doesn't know peace. And we talked about it, if you remember, and I'll remind you, we talked about it in the normal sense. So normal peace, or man's peace, if we were to define it, it is what? If we just want to throw out some words, what are the first things that we think of when we hear the word peace?
Temporary.
Okay, and that's true. That's for sure. It's temporary in man's world. Yep. So it's temporary, and even the temporary thing. I mean, what do we think of when we think of peace?
No war.
No war. Okay, so kind of again, so no war, and again. When we say the words war, now I say we, when normal humans say the word war, outside of our context here in our church, because we'll make that connection here in just a second, but war meaning what? Or the idea of war in a normal sense is what?
Military conflict.
Big military conflict, okay? So big conflict, military conflict, and it's big stuff outside of myself, right? It's out there. So it's this no war, but the idea of that is it's out there. It's not necessary other than the news. Matter of fact, if we didn't have the news and social media, we wouldn't even know what was going on. Okay, so it's not in our backyard. It's out there. So it may bother us. We may struggle with it. We have our own internal conflict and struggle with what's going on out there, but it's out there, okay? So any other ideas? So it's temporary. We don't want war, or peace is no war, and that's that idea that it's outside of myself. What else? As far as man's definition of peace. Okay, contentment, and we'll keep it underneath this umbrella of temporary. So peace meaning contentment, satisfaction,
Resting.
rest. Yeah, that's a theme that we'll see, especially when we hit Psalm chapter 72. So rest. And again, rest being primarily what in man's context? Physical rest, right? So physical rest, yes, we would say, mental or emotional, but still, it's because of the physical conflict or the pressures or the stress of even, observing the physical. But again, I guess what I'm getting at is it's kind of all out there. It has an impact on me, but normal man's peace isn't necessarily tying to or connecting with what God's peace is, which is going to get at the heart and the internal workings of every human being. Okay, and so we'll get to that here in a second. So the way of peace they have not known. It says, and we already read this the other week, it says right after that in verse 9 in Isaiah 59, it says, "For this reason, deliverance is far from us, salvation does not reach us." And again, we talked about how the Hebrew word for peace has this idea of safety. So again, you have safety. So safety, prosperity, the idea of rest or quietness, contentment, peace from war, and then this kind of big idea in what we'll, I guess I've got it, is this idea of, put a line here, of completeness or being whole. That's kind of, to me, that's kind of odd, especially when you compare it to man's peace. It's kind of different ideas, isn't it? Being whole or being complete or even being full. So that has both in the Greek and the Hebrew, the word for peace has this idea of completeness or wholeness. Yeah, Ronnie?
Well, even as you said, being full, it gives me that idea of being satisfied or content because you have all that you need, or you're full or complete, and without that, the opposite.
Okay, we'll just kind of build this because these will come out. So satisfied or content.
Let's just go back on the left side. So the theme there you're saying with man is, unless everything external is peaceful, we're not going to experience peace. Is that what that's getting at? Because those are all kind of situational.
Yeah, so so our DNA has us focused on what is outside of us. Okay? The presupposition prior to being saved, the presupposition is I'm fine already. Okay, I'm okay, I'm fine, and the many verses we've already covered up to this is I'm righteous in the sense that I'm right. My thinking is right. Remember last week we talked about the verses, I think it's Jeremiah. Every man thinks his way is right, and in its end leads to death. So the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things. So that's the truth about the human heart, but that's the result of the fact that every human, again, we especially use the example of a toddler. Before a toddler can even talk, that toddler believes they are right in all their ways. And so, their anger, their discontentment, their frustration is a result of the fact, even though they can't say it, that, hey, you, mom and dad, you've got it wrong. And you don't know what I need. And they can't communicate what they need. We as parents have grown up, with kids. That was one of the most frustrating things with kids before they could talk. You knew something was wrong. Now, it's interesting. You know when they're mad. And you know when something's wrong, especially when something hurts and you don't know what's wrong. But the issue is, in their heart and in their mind, they believe they're right. And they believe they know. Okay? So, and that is solely or mainly based on the externals. Okay, so that they think they need or want something in a relationship that, they need mom and dad to give them something, or we've taken something away from them that they want back. So you're exactly right, that we are, in our normal DNA, we are entirely focused on what is outside of us. And then we think that in order to get these things that constitute peace, and they do to a certain extent, we think that in order to get those, guess who needs to change? Or what needs to change? Everyone else, the outside circumstances. Yeah, did you have something, Ronnie?
Well, I was just, with the example of the toddler, the toddler has needs. Man has needs. And so we are not whole or self-sufficient in and of, we are not content. We can't live or survive alone.
Okay, so listen to that real quick. So what she just said, and this is one of the flavors of our church, is we believe we are built, we being humans, every human being that is born on the face of this earth is built or created to be in need. So you are needy. Every human being is needy from the very beginning. They are not whole in and of themselves. Okay? So they are only whole with their Creator. They are only full, or they are only complete with our Creator. And what has happened from the very beginning is we've said, no, we think we can take care of our needs on our own. And so therefore, we are in a perpetual state of need that, and again, I'm going to get to a different definition here in a second, that shows us that we're not complete because we are separate from God. Yeah, Ronnie?
Well, I just was going to say that then that toddler is seeking to fulfill those needs in whatever way possible, but can only see the seen or the physical. So that's just naturally where man looks to be complete or whole or content or satisfied. But again, it's missing the unseen, which is God Himself. That naturally speaking, humans in the flesh, we are looking to be the seen.
Yeah, so back to what Larry just said, we are looking to only what we know, which is the seen or the external, what we can see and what we think we know right here, and we're missing the main point. Okay? Yeah, Todd.
What we think we can control. We're looking at everything we think we have control over.
But that's the presupposition.
Yeah, I know.
We believe that we have control of it.
Yeah, right.
Which is an ignorant understanding of everything. Okay? James 4, again, another verse that describes this, what is, this lack of peace, or the reason for this lack of peace, is James 4, 1 through 2, where it says, what causes conflicts and quarrels among you? And then he says, don't they come from the passions at war within you? It came out last week, the desires. So again, those could be good desires. It could be a desire for peace, a desire for contentment, or a desire for safety and rest. This is what every human wants. We want, and those are good things to want, but again, because we can only see what is seen, or the external right here. When I say the external, I'm talking about not, inside or internal, but we can only see the seen, and because God is unseen, we miss the main point. So we have these desires. Back to the toddler, they have desires. They have the passions, and it says, Hey, what causes conflicts and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the passions at war within you? So I love that because it takes it right from the external to the internal. Takes it right to the human heart. Okay, so, I mean, isn't that a little interesting where he talks about the passions that war within you? So that again, because the conflicts, even him saying what causes conflicts and quarrels among you, that's outside. I mean, that in a sense, that's what's happening out here between people. But where does it start? Where is he showing that it starts? It starts right inside of here. Because I have desires, I have wants, I have passions that I believe are best for me, and it contradicts what is best for you. So he says, what causes conflicts and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the passions of war within you? You crave what you do not have, which that ultimately gets to the point of what do we not have? What's the main point or the main thing that we don't have?
Peace and true understanding of our relationship with God.
We don't have life because we don't have Christ. Again, I'm talking about prior to being saved. So we're trying to find life. We're trying to get life in peace, in safety, in comfort, in all of those things, and we miss the entire what we're missing. So we're craving these certain things, and we don't have them. We can't get them. Or we can only get them temporarily, which makes us even more enraged, if you think about it. Makes me more enraged. I mean,
When it goes
I get what I want for a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, here it is. Here it is. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And it's this perpetual, it's insanity is what it is. So he says, you crave what you do not have, so then you kill and covet, but you are unable to obtain it. So even the things that we're trying to get, even though we get fleeting glimpses of it, we still can't get them. And we don't get the true them is the main point. We don't get true rest. We don't get true safety. We don't get at, because it's a perverted version of what is real. Any other thoughts on that? So that's the human plight. Yeah, Larry.
What's the verse about, and his end is peace, that Proverbs, the holy man, and his end is peace. And
I'd have to find it. I don't know.
Could you say that louder, Larry?
that one particular scripture, I think it's a Proverbs, speaking about particular nature of man, his end is peace. And I'm just thinking about how we pursue this peace and it's still temporary, but what is this man? I know a lot of times say it's the end of our life, the sum of all things is peace, but maybe not here. So I'm wondering the context of that.
Yeah, try to find it this week and we can talk about it. Yeah. So again, we talked about the idea of God's peace and is this idea of completeness or wholeness. I'll bring up Philippians 4:6-7 because it contrasts what is happening inside of humans versus what God is talking about as far as wholeness. And he says, be anxious for nothing. And we talk about that here a lot of times too. But that word for anxious, do you remember what it means? Do you remember, Ronnie? Yes. It's being pulled apart in opposite directions. So it's the idea that we're being pulled apart and the idea of being pulled into pieces, which is contrary to that idea of wholeness. It's the opposite of wholeness. Wholeness, fullness, and wholeness versus in pieces. So our anxiety, and then what does anxiety come from? In light of what we're talking about. Especially with James chapter 4. What's anxiety come from?
Fear and desire.
My desires. I'm being pulled in opposite directions because of my desires. I mean, even within the same desire, I can be pulled in opposite directions. So I'm pulled apart. It's this idea of internally humans, apart from Christ, apart from their Creator, we are in pieces. We are pulled apart. We are not full. Yeah, Jeff.
I was thinking one way to think about that pull apart idea is if, as we look at our lives, there are certain things, certain conditions that we believe if they were met by the way other people behave, by the way other circumstances are, there is this sort of underlying belief that if those things were all intact in the way that I envision them, then I could be at peace. If all the little planets in the orbit of my sovereignty were in where I want them, then I would be at peace. Whereas sometimes angst comes from seemingly you're trying to get your arms around these things that you just can't control. You're trying to control, you can't control, and you feel like I'm threatened by the unraveling of, or the, in that sense, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, because as you were talking earlier, at what is it that we believe would give us peace? A part of it is, and we've used the analogy before of the kingdom, that if I could be the king over my kingdom, and if all the subjects of my kingdom would act according to my desires, then all would be right in the world, right? All would be okay. I would be at peace. And you think of the contrast where God overall is, even while his creation is at odds with him, enmity, at war with him, he is independent. He is not, his satisfaction is not threatened by things being out of place in a sense. And he even says he's guiding it all to an end that he delights in. All that to say, I think it has something to do with that as well, of that human trying to hold it all together and believing that somehow if those external things, the seen realm things, aren't the way that I think they need to be, then I'm not going to be able to be at peace. And then I'm going to war with other people who threaten all those aspects of the orbit of my life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And even when you say war with other people, most people probably generally don't think they're warring with other people, unless there's a blatant conflict going on, okay? So I would say war with other people or other ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the cultural conflict that we're in, as far as the ideas that anger you, that frustrate you, that repulse you, and I don't need to give examples. So you're at war not just with people, but with ideas or mindsets or belief systems. And again, the war is, I mean, just you observe your own frustration and dissatisfaction as a result of whatever your flavor is. You know, if you can't stand whatever government policy or politician or whatever. So observe yourself in what you're at war with. So it doesn't have to just be a person. Ultimately, you're at war with God. Again, for those of you that haven't been here, that all the other things it's a proxy war. It means it's just it looks like we're at war with these other things, people or ideas, but ultimately we're at war with God. And why is that? Again, that's kind of a quiz question. I mean, why is that? Why are we at war with God?
I just think, like where we're at with our home and what we're trying to do. So we do all these tasks, right? So we're working with just physical stuff, patching and painting and moving stuff and boxing stuff, all that stuff, right? Well, over and over and over again, things have gone wrong. Okay, I did not feel like when I'm outbursts of anger, I'm not feeling like I'm at war with God. I'm not consciously thinking God is against me because of the clerk at Home Depot messing up my paint. Like, I'm not thinking that, but what's coming out of me is like, if that person would have just done their job right and looked it up right the first time and so on and so forth, it could be way easier. Like, so underneath it, if God is in control, then I am at war with him in those moments. Even though I'm not consciously thinking, like, God's right in front of me, and I'm like, what are you doing to me? You know what I mean? It's not that,
Right.
but if it's all true, he is in control. Turning the end from the beginning.
Yeah, so your conflict with the Home Depot checkout person is just a proxy war with the one that you're really at war with. You are second guessing God and his what he is determining is good for you in your life, you're saying, you got the wrong guy, this is dumb, and I'm at war with you. Yeah, Ronnie. Okay, Matt.
Well, I was just thinking of Job and how when he finally, it really comes out, it's like, God, if you would just come down here and sit with me face to face, I tell you how you got it wrong.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's all of our sort of like, when we see clearly, that's really our issue. And it's kind of uncovering that, the willingness to see that and believe that we truly are our words, not words.
And the lie that we're believing is, I will be complete or whole if I can get for myself the peace or the safety or the satisfaction that I want. Completely misunderstanding the idea that, no, I'm only whole and complete when I am resting in God and understanding that He's the one that provides the help that I ultimately need. Yeah, Amanda.
I was just thinking about that reality of believers. Christ has made peace for us with God, and that reality is true. But we just constantly forget, like, who we are in Christ, who He has made us to be, how that relationship has changed. And we need that constant reminder, like, behold your God, like, this is who He is, this is who He says you are. And we need those, like, that's, we keep forgetting, and we're, like, learning to live who we actually are right now.
Right, and that's the whole message of what we believe our church, it's the simplistic message of our church, is behold our God, and in that message is, and all the letters that Paul said, what he does first is he just tells us who we are in Christ. He says we're complete in Christ. He says we have all the fullness of God in Christ. And he says all the things that are true as to how God sees us and what He's done, and He's encouraging us to just live in that. And then every time we experience ourselves in the conflict with the teller, that should show us that we're in conflict with God, is an opportunity to go, God, help me to rest in You.
Yeah, and it's like, if our problem, according to Romans 1, is failing to see God, His value, and His worth, and you could say not worshiping, to use the religious term, not seeing His worth, it really is an invitation to consider His worth when you think that. Look at how different He is. Like if He has 7 billion plus kids, and none of them value Him, none of them even His own. You know what I mean? Like everything in His world, you could argue is going wrong from the beginning. But God is not, He's not dependent upon it in the way that we are. He sits over it all, is governing it all, and is at full and complete peace. Everything is complete and whole because He is complete and whole. He's not dependent upon that. And we are these small creatures with our pseudo-sovereignty, wrestling, struggling, and striving, and He's graciously, even though that is a manifestation of our war with Him, He's graciously offering us Himself and saying, hey, to Amanda's point, I've given you the peace and wholeness you need. Like Jesus, my peace I give to you as a gift. That's amazing, just to be blown away that, wow, I'm in my little world with little, 3 or 4 things that aren't going my way, and they're really small by comparison, but yet here I am, bent out of shape, and look at God who is above all, who deserves all to be His way. When it is His way, it's beneficial to all, and it's currently not that way, but He is not at all lacking peace, lacking wholeness, and He's not unwilling to share that. Like He's given that. That's amazing.
And the irony being, and again, for those of you that haven't been here, this is what we talk about every Sunday. The irony being, He is, through His grace and mercy and kindness, bringing us to the point in which we finally understand that the peace that I'm trying to get for myself never works. And I'm only just banging my head against the wall. And it isn't until I go, this is the peace that I need. And it is only found in Christ. It isn't until I understand that I need help because I can't get it for myself that I finally recognize the value of who God is. And so then, those verses make sense. Like John chapter 14, verse 27. He says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give it to you as the world does. See, then it finally makes sense. That makes sense because this is the kind of peace that the world gives or tries to give. It's the non-peace. There is no peace in the world peace. So he says, this is the peace, I give you my peace, which is wholeness, which is completeness, which is total and complete rest in him. And then therefore there is satisfaction and contentment. See, we're trying to get these pieces. We're trying to get the things. And again, what we're always saying is, this isn't about the things, this is about the person. We get Christ. And as a result of getting Christ, we are complete. We are satisfied. We don't need anything else. So when Jesus says, hey, my peace I give to you, I do not give it to you as the world does. Do not let your hearts be distressed or lacking in courage. Again, it's interesting there if we were to tie, the Philippians anxiety verse where it says, be anxious for nothing. Well, what was happening to the disciples at that point in John? They were anxious. They were distressed. They didn't have courage. And again, that's all tied to the fact that they were trying to get something. They were putting their hope in something and not someone. And they were putting their hope in their own sense of what peace was going to be, or even what hope is. And then I love the prayer of Paul, which again we just brought out, what Amanda said regarding what we already have in Christ. We are complete in Christ. We are filled up. Well, I won't give it away because it's right here. So Paul, he already lays out who we are in Christ in the beginning of Ephesians. And he starts in chapter 1 with a prayer, and then he kind of bookends it with another prayer in chapter 3. And he says, for this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and the length and the height and the depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge. Again, what's missing from every human being? It's that knowledge. It's that understanding. It's that belief. The belief that the love of Christ covers me. And because of the love of Christ, he is saving me. He is redeeming me. He is forgiving me. And then he says, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Again, the interesting thing is, he tells us that we're complete. He tells us that we're full. And then he still prays that you would understand the love of God, which surpasses all knowledge that we have, so that you would be filled. And what's that make you think of? Yeah, Todd.
All the stuff you're into kind of, you go back to the sovereign thing. Really, for me, it boils down to, ungrateful. You're searching for all this stuff because you think you need more, you think you need something else. Not really understanding what you have to start with. You think the kid, well, I want more. You take any of us, the Home Depot thing or whatever thing that sets me off, which can be just about anything. But, you take that compared to a friend of mine that grew up in Haiti that didn't have food 4 or 5 days at a time because they didn't have any or didn't go to school for a year. It cost $20 or whatever else. And think what they wouldn't care about some of the stuff that bothers us, but it's only because we think we deserve more or we're ungrateful for what we have.
Dissatisfaction, ungratefulness.
You think about it, you're alive, everything's created. It's amazing you exist to begin with.
And that's the whole point of what God is trying to tell us. Is he's saying, hey, you know what? I've created you. I have you in the palm of my hand. And despite what you're experiencing right now, trust me that I know what I'm doing with you. In every aspect.
You're where you need
And he's saying, hey, your status is fine. You're my kid. I've given you my inheritance. Everything that Paul says in Ephesians. I've given you everything. It's all done. You're going to be with me in heaven for eternity, and you're not going to even have to struggle with yourself anymore. But for right now, I have you in a place where I'm showing you that I am good enough for you. I mean, that's the bottom line of what God is saying in all of Scripture. And again, it comes up every Sunday. That's why we're still alive. Even though we don't want, I mean, in a sense, we don't want this. I don't want war. I don't want pain. I don't want conflict at my house. All of this stuff. I want more. I'm not grateful. It all shoves us or sends us back to this message that God's just saying, hey, you know what I'm doing with that? I'm showing you that I'm good enough. That I know what I'm doing with you. That I know the plans that I have for you. Again, even in that verse, says, I know I have the plans for you. Plans to prosper you. Plans to give you a hope. Plans to give you peace. And again, we've talked already about the duality. We're not even going to get to Psalm 23. We're going to have to wait for that one. But the psalmist just lays out peace in human terms.
Yeah, so we take that verse like so many others and say, okay, well, God's going to give me peace. Then now God is this like co-laborer with me in life who's going to give me the things that I need. And so even if something doesn't work out or whatever, I'm praying that somehow He fixes it and He does this and that, because we think we still need all those planets to be in orbit, right? So He's going to help us get in orbit. Whereas what we're seeing and how it ties to love and Paul's prayer that they would see the fullness of God's love is like it almost takes for us to have that childish outburst of, hey, if you love me, you would do it my way. Hey, God, if you love me, you would give me this, right? The real nitty-gritty stuff is when God doesn't give you X, Y, or Z that you think you need. And then you're left to see, wow, I'm not happy about this. And that's ironically where He teaches us of His love, and that the kind of peace I'm giving you doesn't have to do with the elemental things being in orbit the way you want them. I've given you, so even that, Jeremiah, where He says, I know what plans I have to prosper you, it's like, to use the Ronnie's unseen scene chart, it's like the unseen prospering that is a miracle for us to be able to see.
It's a different kind of prosper.
God is the point.
It's a different kind of prosper, a different kind of peace. Again, what he says in Philippians, he says it's a peace that surpasses understanding. Again, it's a peace that's beyond the peace that you think that you're getting or that you think that you want. And by the way, it'll blow it'll blow this peace away. But we don't understand that until God brings us to that point. Ultimately, we won't understand it until we're face to face with Him. So yeah, it's amazing. But again, we'll talk about the psalm again, where again, God still works in the human realm in which He has patience with us and even gives us some of the peace sometimes that we're asking for or wanting. But ultimately, He's talking about this different kind of peace. The peace that only comes when He miraculously helps us see what we really need. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord God, I thank You for Your love. I thank You for giving us Your word. I thank You that it just constantly shows us what a good and great God that You are. Help us to believe it a little bit more this morning and help us to find rest and Your peace as a result of it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.